Greetings, everyone. We're going to be networking serverless web apps today. Let's go ahead and take a look at our current data, and I'll talk you through what we're planning on doing. So this is our task master. I'm going to go ahead and put in a task, connect web apps. I'm going to say it's going to be due date on the 9th, and it's elevated priority. As you can see, it's arrived here on our calendar. And from here, let's take a look at the data down in the local storage, and you can see where it exists currently, and you can see the task is listed here. We're going to use that task that says connect web apps as the value, and that's going to be something that we can apply on our time clock. We're going to be able to implement that so that one individual can have multiple different time clocks based on whatever they're working on, whatever task they're working on. They can basically say, I worked this many hours on this task, and so on and so forth, so it's more specific. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we're going to tie these together. This is Bootstrap, and these are the navigation kind of documentation stuff that they have. And notice how as you get closer in, these things start to slam shut. That is telling you the size as to which they go mobile. And I'm going to go for the one that's the small one. And I'm going to basically right-click and take a look at the HTML I shall copy right out of their documentation and apply it to what I need to and tailor it to fit my needs. This is typically how I'll do it, strip out all this stuff, because I don't really use their JavaScript. So actually, I don't use their JavaScript at all. It's not necessary. So ultimately, a lot of this stuff's going to get stripped out. But I do need some kind of a template to go ahead and add into my Taskmaster's index. So as you can see, it has all the examples we were talking about. And this is just a drop down, and I'll type some stuff in here, but then delete it because I'm not going to need a drop down. So this is a little bit of just a, hey, look what we've got. And then I don't need that form. And then these line item nav item classes, that's actually what I'm going to be using because I don't have too much stuff to list currently. So let's go ahead and start building out what we need within this nav. Okay, so I need to go ahead and obviously put the address that things need to go to. I need to put the name, and we're just going to do a static menu right now. So we're going to go ahead and represent 3 of the 4 apps I'm going to be tying in together here. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just going through and seeing where else I need to put all this stuff and get their addresses. Start taking out things we don't need. And there's quite a bit of it, actually. As you can see, the hooks that they've put into this are significant for Bootstrap. So we'll clear those out and start working on our own toggle for the mobile nav. I don't want to put in someone else's work. Typically, it's too much JavaScript. It's too blocky. I like to build my own. It's much smaller, and I know how to manipulate it a lot better. So I don't need theirs. This is, I would imagine that this is how most people like to do stuff. They like to do it their way. And coincidentally, I think everybody else's way is crap. So whatever. I'm just like everybody else, I guess. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put in a function called toggle, and I'll pass the mobile nav, and let's build out a function. And at this point, toggle can be used for a lot of things. And I kind of, in my head, at this point while I'm typing, I'm going back and forth as to, do I want to use toggle for this and this alone? Or do I want to use it for many other things? And so you can see my thought process as I go back and forth thinking, yeah, well, first off, I'll just see if it's mobile nav, and then we'll do what we got to do. And then otherwise, as you can see, I'm preparing myself for an else. Then we'll go on. Otherwise, if it's not that, we'll do something else. And, it's just a little process of elimination of what I think is going to be the best thing for me. And if I'm not mistaken, I already have toggle already tied into this app through the footer's JavaScript. Pretty sure. So I'm not going to need it. And all this stuff is just going to be for the birds here, and I'll crunch it down and delete it here in a second. I want to show you, walk you through that this is kind of my process. I'll write something multiple times over and then say, never mind. And I'll just walk off. That's fine. I think everybody has some kind of a process that they they deliver their content by, and whatever suits them best, as long as it gets delivered, Anyway, so yeah, this is a pretty standard of how the other one works, where you're looking for the data toggle, and then it goes and looks for the one with the value that matches the one that you clicked. And so it'll do a for each to see all the data toggles and check their values, and if it matches, then that's the one you show, and you hide all the others. So yes, it's typical, and then I tear it out. There you go. But not necessary. So fun stuff, though. Yep, taking it out. Rename the function. Let's keep it real here. Let's get back to what we were doing. Name this properly. And then on with our lives here. And there we go. It's like working. It's not shutting though, so we'll go fix that. Yeah, it's only going to say that collapse one time when it's collapsed. So it won't make any sense otherwise. All right, so yeah, now it toggles, and that'll work. Working mobile nav. All right, let's get this static nav links out of there. They're just HTML, as you remember. And so, coincidentally, if I ever wanted to change something, I'd have to change them everywhere and multiple times over. So what I'm going to do is do a nav link target. It's going to be an ID I define. And then I'm going to build those nav links out of a JavaScript for loop. And we're going to basically compile a whole bunch of strings together with the correct address and name. And that'll make up our nav links, and then we'll apply it into the nav link target inner HTML. It's fairly standard. That's similar to what you would do in React if you were going to be mapping through something and then populating it. So let's go ahead and build out that object, and we'll copy from the static that we already had. This will be easy enough, considering I just copied and commented out what we need to do for each of key and value in each of the iterations of the object. So another thing that's going to be fun is I'm going to actually match these up to whatever the title of the page is. And then so as we iterate through the data, it'll go check and see, hey, does this match the title of the page? If so, let's make this link the active link, and we'll highlight it and then make it look like it's the one. So it'll kind of know what page it's on, for the user. It will at least appear to be, hey, this is the page we're on, let's highlight it. I remember I used to work at CVS, and the guy was going to have somebody go through every single page of a 150-page application and literally find which one was active and then write the word active in the class. I was like, what are we doing here? Why don't you, detect it from the URL, and then you go find all the hrefs and say, hey, does any of these hrefs match the URL that we're at? And if so, then you apply it via JavaScript active. I mean, you're talking hours worth of somebody's time would have been wasted going around trying to make something active. So JavaScript will cut through that time-consuming kind of, it's more busy work that wouldn't be necessary. JavaScript does all that for you. I've noticed a lot of times if you're downloading stuff from multiple databases and you need to compile them together, JavaScript's really good about it. Let's grab the data from here and here, and then now we'll put them into one object. So if you ever want to hurry up and do something fast, this is going to be it. Here's an example of making something active. I kind of screw around a little bit and kind of find my best move here. But you'll see my process here shortly. And this is going to build out your nav. The string is going to be concatenated with all of the stuff in the data. So here we go. Now I start to take a look at these titles, and I start to figure out if I could just find what the inner HTML is of that, then we would know. So here we go. I determine the title, which would be whatever's in the title of the page. So first off, by default, active is just an empty string. But if, for some reason, the name in this nav data equals whatever the document title inner HTML is, well, then that means the active is going to be this name, the one that matches the title of the document. There we go. And the taskmaster is highlighted. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the logo for the nav bar. And it's one of those things where it's just a branding thing. I would imagine that it's in your best interest to put together some kind of logo and maybe some color schemes and just say, hey, this is kind of my look. So everybody can kind of recognize, oh, this guy did it. And then from there, you just move on, and it's your branding. Something that fairly simple that represents what you do. So yeah, I'm going to grab this logo from my other web app that I'm going to be working on as well. And I'm just going to grab the address of that logo and implement it here. It's coming from my website, so I'll just write the image tag myself and grab the source and put it in there. And image fluid is the Bootstrap's class that basically makes this thing size correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and just write in my website, and I'll make sure it's a new window so they don't lose what they're doing. And then I'm going to make a parameter so I know from my analytics where exactly they came from when they clicked this link. But that's just from my analytics right here. Anyway, so now this is just a copy pasting to all the HTML files that I want to apply on this network to. I mean, this one already had a nav, but we're not really using it. And so what I'm going to be doing here is taking it and moving that down into just a standard div, and then we'll put the new nav in there. So I think this is the only one that already had a nav. The other ones did not. But as you can see, the logo is kind of overlapping the first link. So we're going to be doing some CSS work here. It's just the utilities that Bootstrap has applied. So when you start doing padding right, and it's a 3R REM, that's kind of, as you can see, that's a spacing concept that's in their utilities. So padding PR, padding right, dash, and then however much, which number base is the size. So let's take a look and start dealing with how this thing is built, and then we'll start taking it there and running a little bit of options. What I love about working with the front end is you can ultimately kind of play with the CSS in real time and see what it looks like before you waste all of your time. As you can see, I've moved this over with a 5 REM, and it's real far over. I think I play with this a little bit more. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it boils down to every detail you could ever want of the elements. So if you want to fix something before you start typing in CSS, you could clearly just do it there. See if it worked. There we go. I just moved that whole thing over. With the padding or margin on the left. I just used my CSS this time, though. Not a big deal to add it to the nav link target, and everything's a little more tidy, as you can see. And later on, I'll be working on just kind of making these things more consistent. You'll see the updates as you come around and see how much I've committed to changing and making these consistent. They really didn't have anything to do with each other for the most part, and I've been tying them together slowly, so that the public can use them. And then obviously they had different CSS and they had their own functionality that was, somewhat overlapping. It could be at least. So the whole concept of me here in these classes is how do you kind of get these things networked and then kind of refine them down to make sure that they're consistent. And they're not going to be consistent for a little while. Like I said, they were on their own. They weren't, working together until now. So that's what you're going to expect. And here I am going ahead and adding in a link to the shared functionality for the JavaScript. Now, once I put this in here, that means clearly if I make any changes to that JavaScript file, it's going to affect every file that uses that file, and it's, in this case, 4 of them. So be careful. Be careful what you do. If you mess one thing up, they're all going to have to be checked. And obviously there's going to be a lot of manipulation with the CSS. And we're going to be taking out a lot of stuff and then putting it onto the shared CSS so that they all start to look alike. And then obviously the hierarchy of what is displayed first is going to count big time. So obviously the last one in the hierarchy of style sheets implemented is going to be the local style.css. But other than that, you're going to see a lot of ones kind of, I need to have this one above that one because they override. Whichever one the last one is on the stylings is the one that gets used. So they will cancel each other out, no problem. And so the more of those things you have, the bigger problem. The older the project, there's going to probably more issues like canceling one thing cancels another thing out. That happens a lot. So, but nothing that can't be fixed. A lot of times it's just see what you're using, and a lot of times if you're not using something, clear it out. And I would think that nowadays there's probably something you can run through and say, hey, are we using this or this and this? And if not, get it out of there. It's not worth it. Especially if you got multiple CSS files from multiple places that are all sharing. Okay. So I'm also going to bring in, I need to get those tasks from my time clock. The time clock needs those tasks. Those tasks are coming from my Taskmaster calendar, and it's saving them in local storage. So when this page loads, I want it to go through the local storage and get all the tasks that are on the Taskmaster, and then make sure it lists them in order over here on this time clock page. And that way, when you apply your hours you've worked, you can select which ticket or task you were working on from this drop-down menu that I have populated with all your tasks. And so once an app that didn't have any kind of tie-in with this one is now directly tied in with, hey, I worked this many hours, and here's the tickets, and you can gather up when the ticket was made, what kind of priority it has, and then when it's done, when it's due. So you start to build more information and billable hours for your client. Yeah, I mean, you can tell your client anything, but if you write something down saying, here's this documentation, it means a lot more. It'll hold up in court, is what I'm saying. Okay. So this is going to be on load. I'm going to check to see if there is, task items from the Taskmaster. I want to see if that's in local storage on load. So as you can see, this is just clearly floating in the middle of my JavaScript file at the bottom. It's not being called by a function or anything. So that means when the page comes up, this is just going to run. There's nothing stopping it. So as we know, local storage is going to be storing JSON, but it stores it in a string fashion. So I need to get it out of that and then clarify that this is now an object that we can iterate through. And then so once I start iterating through it, I'm going to start asking, hey, do you have anything like a key and value that equals like a task? And if so, give me that value because I want to put it into this menu over here. And so I get an empty string. Actually, this string in particular is not empty. I go ahead and ask what exactly is here already, which is like a default option. And I'm going to say, okay, fine. That's what we're starting with in the string is the default. And then from here, we're going to build out all the other ones based on what was in the tasks. So yeah, the syntax is a little destroyed right here. I can see I got to come back and clean some of this up. But as you can see, it's coming together. My menu is going to come together fine. I got to get that after value. I have syntax error, but we'll get back to that. Now, add task is going to be something that I'm going to apply. And it's going to be applied to the local storage as well. Now, if it says default, then I'm not going to put it as somebody's ticket. But if it says anything other than default, then from there I will apply it to a ticket. And then here's my initial idea, which was just doing a variable. Unfortunately, it wasn't updating in real time the way I liked it. So I switched it over to using local storage, which is fine because the rest of the stuff is using local storage too. However, I'm going to let you know that if you clear out your local storage, you're going to have real problems finding this stuff again. So I do have plans in the next few videos to make a downloadable concept so that these won't be just living in local storage. You can save them and then bring them back, which a couple of these apps already have that, but I'm going to make it to where all the data will be savable. So there will be no server, but yet you can still run your business. Still do your books, and we'll probably put in some budgeting as well. I'd like to do that. Here we go. You see how it says Connect Web Apps? That's because it populated here. Now I'm putting a little bit of, yeah, so it did not update. You just have two colons next to each other. Let's delete that and try this again. Yeah, like I said, using that variable up there above all the functions, it's not going to update. So when the emails run, instead, I'm just going to find anytime that someone's looking for the email and then they're going to run the validation and need to fill that variable, this is the function I'm using. So in here, I've decided I'm going to go ahead and put the ticket right in here with the email at the end. Put a colon between them. And so it'll be like, yes, it's this email and with this ticket. And as you can see, this is my process of tying the two together. So when I go for an add task, I'm just going to do local storage, and I'm going to set the item there. And then that'll be the place where I grab it too. Yeah, it's just going to be the value of the task target ID. Yeah, so whatever the selection of the menu is going to be what we're going to apply for the ticket. So if it says default, then we're not going to do that. Here we go. So I've got a syntax error, no problem. I got a little plus sign in there. There we go. Let's clear that out, and now we should have the colon, and then it's added to whatever that value is. So let's try one more time. Connect Web Apps is the task we're working on. Here's my email address. It's in January. We're clocking in. Here we go. That's my ticket. That's my clock in. Very specific. So let's go ahead and get this into the task master. I need to put these navigation in all of them. There's 4 of them right now, but there'll be more. And like I said, the taskmaster already had one, a nav bar, but it wasn't really 100% usable. I mean, the meat of the nav bar was more stuff I'm taking out right now and just going to have in a div below. That's just some instructions and then little details for the user. And I'd go ahead and add it to Git so we can get this published and everybody can use it. So here I'm going to be taking out that a lot of the CSS from what I initially had at the Analyze Bank files, because I'm going to tie it in, and they're all going to share the same look and feel. So I need to start basically taking down pieces that this had and then putting up things that I do have. I'm going to start matching up their fonts. Obviously the nav is going to be tied together to a consistent look, so I have to take this other one apart. And then there's going to be some stylings that I'm going to have to kind of refine down over these next few courses to match everything up. But you'll see the progression of it, everything's starting to take place, and then to the user's eye, we'll just see like, oh, this is one big application. But coincidentally, there's no server. This is all just basically one page is an app, and then there's multiple pages networked, and this is our start. Right now I have 3. We're going to have another one. I'm going to do some bug fixing here real quick so that the default works for our tasks. So let's make a new task. Let's go into the clock in, clock out, select our new task, take a look and see if we're currently working, and we'll run a test on it. And just a little refactoring here. I don't need to make things so complicated, and I think everybody's used to, how they operate. So they'll write something, evaluate it in their head, test it, and then you start thinking, okay, maybe I could put it in another place and it'd be more effective. It might actually, be less problematic, or it might be easier to do it in one spot other than another, and that's what's going on here. When I'm running the email, I will now compile everything and detect if it's a default. We'll just forget about it. And then from there, it'll be fine. Obviously, we're validating to make sure that it's a real email address, because we need to have, the right, at least it has to have the @ symbol, a couple of, characters, and then a period, and then a couple more characters. It has to follow that status. So looks like we're coming to the end of it for this lesson, at least. But like I said, there's more to come. I'm going to be putting together a budgeting concept for each ticket as well. So that'll be helpful. We're basically going to do that. I'll probably put a timeline together. And here we go. I'm doing some tests, and you can see that we are getting different tickets based on the user. So the user can have any number of tickets open and times selected for those tickets specifically. And here, or they could just have one for them, and that'd be fine too. But as you can see, I need to set this as default when they load. That's the key. It's still stuck as the last thing they selected, because I need to basically set the default to when they load to be default, and then that way I won't update the wrong one. So it always starts out at default, and then they can change it if they like. There we go. Now they're tying together correctly. Now we do the connect with web apps, and it's a different story. See, a different text or different data altogether. So let's go ahead and commit this information. Let's go ahead and add the Invoice Builder to our list. I'm going to go ahead and get the correct CSS and JavaScript files that have been shared throughout and put them in the correct spot for the Invoice Builder. And as you can see, I'm just going to put it on the top. Oh, yeah, there we go. And then from there, you guys remember this, just the steps here to put this all together. I'm going to go ahead and update it. And this one actually brought in some nice fonts and stuff, and some stuff I'm going to go ahead and utilize in the rest of the app. So as you can see, I'm picking up some traits of each one of these and applying them to our network. And granted, we know now that the taskmaster is kind of the grand father of all. If the footer is the grandfather of the entire thing I've been building, including my games, then this would be like kind of the networking tool I'm using for the navbar of my web development applications. So anything that I want to share across that board, I go to the shared functionality or the stylings of my original taskmaster, and then I'll share across the board. So there are some key files in here that actually are more important elements than others, because they share and are the holders of the original stylings or the original functionality that is being implemented throughout everything else. So as you can see, this is where we're standing. It's not consistent with fonts, but I'm gonna tidy that up before our next talk. I hope you learned something.